I've just been gifted by so many people who have listened to me and held space from that deep place. And when I noticed was when I started resonating with myself. And I can't even describe the feeling of what it is to finally feel grounded and embodied in my body after years of rubbing against those edges of copycats and trying to fit in and trying to make different tenets work for me, and being heard and listening by others and then listening to myself. It's the juice. Okay, everybody, we have a special event on our hands. This is officially the season finale of the How to Be Human podcast. And lucky for us, we have the Hedge School founder himself, Steve Brophy, in the house. What's up, Steve?
Hello there.
So for this special event, Steve is our first time returning guest, but he's not just a guest today. He's actually going to take the reins and he is going to host this show, and we're trading places. I'm going to go ahead and be in the interviewee chair because a lot of you have asked, have you answered these questions? What about you getting interviewed? So we're bringing it live to you. I'm going to go ahead and sit in the hot seat and answer some of these questions. Steve, microphone over to you, buddy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it feels beautiful to be back staring across the screen at your face, and the serendipity of the last time that we spoke. And I was speaking about a book that I had written that come out. And I now stand across my screen looking at you with these beautiful How to Be Human questions next to me. But before I launch into those, you have been working away on a little creative endeavor. So do you want to maybe talk to the audience about what has been happening in the world of the writer that is you?
The world of the writer that is me. So we are recording this on September 28th, 2022. And on October 4th, so 6 days away, I am officially releasing my first juvenile fiction novel. It is a fantasy adventure set in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. These kids go on a treasure hunt and looking for a magical healing gem. And this happens to be a portal. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story, but they go on a fantasy adventure, and it has been a labor of love for 4 years. And I am so excited to share it with the world.
Let's just breathe that in, because 4 years is a long time. That's a university degree. That's a duration of school, and you have labored in love with this book. And so it's so beautiful for you to be able to hold it up. But can you take us back to the seed when the idea first landed and you went, I'm going to set off on this little path. I don't know where it'll take me. Can you take us back to that place, please?
I can. It's a beautiful question. It was 2018. I was working with a writing coach. Her name is Christy Krug. Shout out to her, Wildfire Writing. She was helping me craft together a grief memoir, which I know you know a lot about. And I was just really tugging at the words and the pages, and it was a very trying time to try to get through some of the words. And one day she challenged me. It was actually the best challenge I've ever had in my life. And she said, let's write something fun. And I was like, okay, let me write something fun. What would be fun? So it was 2018. I had just moved back to my hometown, my childhood hometown, bought my first little cabin, my first home ever, summer of 2018. And I'm running around this town. I'm like, I feel like a kid again. Like, this is where I rode my bike to school. This is the park that I played soccer at. This is where I went to my grandma and my mom's restaurant every morning for breakfast. Um, so these memories just kept kind of flooding in, and I was like, what if there were these kids in this town and they went on a magical healing adventure? So I kind of took a few portions of the grief memoir, because there's some moments, there's that, one of the kids' dad is ill, and they need to find a way to help him, find a miracle, something, and that's what the healing gem is. And I brought it into this beautiful magical childhood and kind of brought them together to see, could they find a magical healing gem? What would it be like for them to go on the journey? Let's see.
Ah, grief, memoir, and fun. That's a pretty interesting just to think about. Even just the two words grief memoir, like that is, I wrote something that was part poetic, part really just laying my heart on the table. And it wasn't fun. And so for you to take a beautiful spin on it, and to not only to take a beautiful spin on it, but you wrote it as a juvenile fiction. And so if you think about the placing of that, is you've actually taken your life experience, the remembrance of your childhood and those happy memories, and also the fact that life will come with grief. And then you've gifted it as a, a way forward, like a portal. Well, really a gem for younger kids before they set out, so that they can access it in a fun, like beautiful story. So just kudos to that.
Thanks.
Can I ask, and I don't want to give too much away here, but do you connect with all of the four characters, or is there a particular character, or are they like it's your childhood alive in with your friends in it? Keen to just feel into where you place in the book.
That is a fair question. There are 5 characters, and 2 of them are twins, so they kind of interchange places a lot. Um, of the 5 characters, so there is Asia and Chuck and Adam and Clara and Autumn. And I would say I probably resonate the most with Clara. She, however, is not me, but there are some resemblances to me in there. And I would say that the other characters are definitely resemblance of friends in my life, portions of them. So there's the relationship between Clara and Adam might be similar to a childhood friendship that I have, but then another portion of it is like a friendship that I have now with somebody. So just taking those little different pieces of, I would call them appreciation, moments and connections with people that I appreciate, and weaving them into the story. I love this about you. When you held your hand out here, when you encouraged me here, and getting those little moments in the story, those are some of the magical pieces that I weaved in.
Oh, beautiful. And 4 years is a long time. How was it a consistent pacing? Was it intense for a month, down for 3? What did it feel like? Because I feel like that's really important for budding writers, is to understand how particular people wrote. Like, because I wrote 3 drafts of mine and discarded every bit of it. And then these poems came to me, and then I had friends, but I wrote them in intense bursts where there was times where I didn't think I'd make it. So I'm just super keen to go behind the scenes of the sort of the pacing of the 4 years.
Beautiful question. And I love going there because I keep visiting it myself, of like, how did I do this? How did it work best? How could I recreate it? And that first summer of 2018 was when I started the first page, and it actually started from a Harry Potter quote. I can't remember it, but I'll link it below. Um, and what I did was I sat down every single morning for 15 minutes, and that's it. 15 minutes. I wrote stream of consciousness with my computer, and I would start at the same scene. So it was like, these kids are going on an adventure. I have no idea where they're going, and I would write for 15 minutes, stop, and then the next day I'd start wherever I stopped and continue the next part. And I did that for the entire summer. So the bulk of the book was written in that first summer of 2018. And after that, it took a little time away, about 6 months it sat, and I didn't touch it or edit it or anything because I just kind of had enough of working on it and dreaming about it and having all these expectations. And it came back out about 2019. I started sending it to beta readers, and they read through the whole thing. Several people read the entire manuscript, and I started getting feedback. This part doesn't make sense. You change your tense here. You clean this part up. And then once I was able to hear it reflected back to me, okay, yep, that part, it's a little empty there. I was able to go back in with a different eye, and I started stringing different parts together. So that was almost like a different portion of the writing once other people had seen it. And then in 2020, I was getting ready to send it out to publishers and take the next step and just really send it to an editor and get it buttoned down. And literally the day I was heading that direction, it was a Saturday, some events happened in my life on the exact same day and went another direction, and took all of my time, energy, and spirit to resolve, as I have heard many folks have gone through for 2020. So I focused on that, but I also, in the back of my mind, knew that, okay, this happened on the same day. I was intentionally heading this direction with this book. There's got to be something powerful and really beautiful here. So I kept it earmarked in my head. As soon as I had this other situation wrapped up, I then, at the end of 2020, 2021, started getting back into it and started, you really, okay, let's bring this home. I've got to finish this home. And the last final stages, I actually will hat tip to my friend, you, dear Steve Brophy, is you wrote out the steps of how to self-publish, and really seeing somebody else in my life, a friend who was able to walk through the steps. And I'd heard about your book, I'd heard about your writings, and then I saw you publish it, and it was in your hands and it was in other people's hands. And the minute you published it, I bought it and I read it in that one night. And I was so excited for you. And I was like, okay, the breadcrumbs are here. I'm going to do this thing. So this entire last summer has been the finishing steps, getting in touch with a graphic designer, designing the cover and getting it printed and laid out and talking to people. That's been a bulk of it this last, and I plan to publish it in July, but we made it to October. So late is better than never.
Just kudos again. Just that journey of, like, a lot of people feel like it's written in an intense burst and it's this, but 15 minutes a day, can you gift that to yourself? And Hemingway used to do that, where he'd write or leave a line half finished and then pick it up the next day, and then you'd write another 15. I did mine in 5. Mine was 5 minutes, and I just 5, but you never did just 5. I'd always go a little bit longer, or some days I'd be like, oh my God, hurry up, 5 minutes. But it was the art of showing up, like showing up to your meditation practice or your yoga practice or going for a walk. These things, it's all about showing up. And I just love the human story behind that, because I want to thank you, because when I was writing Hedge School, you were one of the most active listeners in that whole period of sharing, and that creative period helped me with the courage to publish, because there's times when you can write in silence and then just nobody's listening. And so when I reached out via an interactive post, you were one of the people who responded, and you responded with these beautiful questions. And I just wanted to honor the fact that you didn't just say, hey, here are these 5 questions that just came to me, is that you actually stewarded those questions and you took them and you said, I have a responsibility. Something is speaking to me through these questions. So it is my great honor to be able to play them back to you. And before that, what I want to do is just to kind of like shake off all of the other answers that have come, and to allow what wants to emerge to come through these questions, because they have, I feel a real responsibility to hold space for you to share, because you've gifted me so much in return. So with that, I'm going to start with question one, which is how to be human. What is the best integration of humanness?
Yeah, this set of questions has been a fun labor of love for the last year, and I've gotten to interview some of my favorite humans about what they thought it was to be human. And in those 12 interviews, one a month for the last year, the thing that started coming up the most was we're already human. Like we already are. Like you don't have to be anything other than what you are. And so the question kind of evolved into how do we human well? How do we be better humans? And to me, I, I really feel like it comes down to acknowledging our capacities. And I think that we have capacities in our mental space, we have capacities in our emotional space, we have capacities in our physical space. And when all of that comes together, what I believe is when our spiritual sense starts coming together. So, the best integration of humanness is somebody who knows what they can do with their life mentally, what they're focused on, what they can think about, what kind of practices to put in their life. Somebody who is sensing emotionally. Are they in touch with anger that comes through? Do they know that means they need to set a boundary? Somebody who is embodied in their body, is breathing fully, is moving not for the sake of just to look a certain way, but to feel and utilize those other capacities, their emotions and their mental. And there's something that happens when one is in touch with the physical, mental, and emotional that perhaps I could call it presence, soul, essence starts shining through. And it's our spiritual sense. And we get to connect with other people and connect with projects and places that really start feeling like home. And in the sense of not longing for home as if it's somewhere away we're away from, but we're home in our body, in our interactions, in the places that we go to. And I feel like that's the best integration of humanness.
Beautiful. When I was listening, I've never noticed hue and human, and just thinking of that, of like the hue of a person, like a light in there and a glimmer. And I love then the question integration became really important. And what I loved about that was an internal reflection of sometimes we can feel really off, like jagged, where the pieces don't quite fit. And so what you're saying is just it's like when things just click into its natural beauty. And interesting reflection from others, like we already are human, but sometimes we don't feel it. Like, so you can have this feeling of being alien. And I love the fact that it's part inner work, and then there's this folding out where it's outer, where I meet the world then, and that integration. So I must integrate here first to integrate outside. So I just love that, and I love the questions, and I want to piggyback this next question because I feel like it ties beautifully. Like, how can we intentionally engage all humans to be more human? If people are already saying, well, we're already human, and I think that there's a real delineation here. There's a real separation where when you actually question and sit with the inquiry, what it means to be human, and really sit with it and let that question work its way with you, I feel like then you can say, from that place, how do we intentionally engage all humans to be that way, truly integrated?
I think that the best way that I could answer that, and where I've seen the most action or response from another human, is something that you actually displayed right there, Steve. It's deep listening. It's listening not just with our ears, but with our full body and all of our senses, and what it feels like to be in the presence of another person. Because if you can feel inside of yourself as somebody is speaking or you're with them, there's a lot more happening than just what there's the words that they're saying. And if you can listen with somebody and then get curious around what you're hearing or receiving, I feel like that's an invitation for the other person to integrate with what you're hearing, with what you could mirror back to them, with what they are, dare I call it, say, projecting, but sharing with the world, what their interaction with the world is. And that interaction space, what you kind of just said before, the inner and the outer, where we meet the world, it's a gift. It's a gift to be fully heard by somebody else, because it only helps you learn more about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Do you know what I love about that? First of all, that process of holding space for somebody, like truly listening, is, I'm just getting full body tingles just saying it. It heals. So like the healing gem, it heals. And how, when you have your inner world, you're the only person who gets to witness that, bear witness. That's a great responsibility. But when you meet the world sometimes and you aren't held, or you don't meet spaces where you can feel like yourself, then we mimic, we copy, we apologize, and really we change our contours to be more palatable to other people. And true listening is not pointing out, oh, why does your nose look like that? Why do you speak like that? Why do you walk like that? Why do you sound like that? Is actually what you mentioned before about a curiosity. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. And then a deep appreciation for the witnessing of somebody who is a once in a lifetime being, and then a deep appreciation for that. And we don't do that. So eventually we end up being these copycats where we're out of integration. And so I love that how do you help people be more human? Well, you help them just be more themselves. And how do you do that? Well, like you said, deep listening.
Deep listening.
Yeah. Which is something that you're really marvelous at, can I say? And anybody who's sat on your opposite you will attest to that, because they'll say answers that they never would have said before. And that for me is that you've provided the space, and then they have the courage to be more themselves. So that's just kudos to you and the spaces that you create.
Thank you. It's been a blessing to host these interviews, and it's been a challenge. It may look like it comes easy to me, but just a little backstory: when I was a kid, it was tough for me to talk on the phone. So this is a life process, and listening. I've just been gifted by so many people who have listened to me and held space from that deep place. And when I noticed was when I started resonating with myself. And I can't even describe the feeling of what it is to finally feel grounded and embodied in my body after years of rubbing against those edges of copycats and trying to fit in and trying to make different tenets work for me, and being heard and listening by others and then listening to myself, it it's the juice.
There's your soundbite right there. Oh, that, do you know when I one of the things that I love when that's a signature sound right there. That was like a magnetism when you're like, I don't know where those words came from. And they come from pure integration, like pure source. And it's just this beautiful surrender to letting the song come out. Now, I want to backstep a little bit because I know that story about not speaking on the phone. Talk to me about this, because my wife talks to me about, do you have like a phone phobia? And there's something about speaking on the phone, and I remember it like it has things for me. And I, like you, am miles away from the person that I was when I was little, where I was afraid of speaking. Love to speak, but not in public, not on not on these really confrontational mediums. So share that story.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I grew up with a single mom, and so my dad was in another state in Utah, and I love my dad dearly, and I love my mom dearly. And anytime I was with the other one, I would need to call and talk to the other parent. And it was always so hard only because I loved them so much. And I just it was hard for the words to come out, and all I could say was, I miss you, I love you, and anything else that would come out would be kind of like, fine, okay. But there was just nothing else that could come out. And then so that was kind of probably where it started. And then, just picking up a phone when you're a kid or a teenager, it just didn't, I had nothing to say.
And that sentence there, you think about it, I have nothing to say. And how many of us say that back to each other? Oh, I've just got nothing to say. Who would want to hear from me? And what you have done in this series, and this is going to segue into this next question. What you've done with this is you have not only stewarded these beautiful questions, but you've then celebrated that by creating a space of deep listening with others. But you have not chosen the person who multi-billionaire or climbed Mount Everest. You've deliberately chosen people who have helped light the way for you. And one of the key elements about those people is they're just delightfully human. And people would say normal, but normal doesn't mean anything. So from that, you have got this beautiful back catalogue now of examples. And so I want to go into question 3. What are the best examples of being human? Who and what do these practices look like? But I want to put a caveat on that. And I want you to speak to yours first, and then you'll have the collective inspiration of the others to weave in later.
So let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You want me to speak to my practices first or
Yeah.
the people? Mine
Yeah,
first?
I want you first, and then the others can be woven in afterwards.
This is a really good question, Steve. Well, my practices. So I would say when I wrote this book, I was in a practice of doing I always do some sort of morning ritual, whether it's working out, running, reading, writing. And it used to be in just a big chunk, an hour or 2 hours of one of those things, a long time. And then I went through a program and I was kind of challenged to split it up. What are some things, how could you condense those and get it into 1 hour? So could you move, meditate, write in 1 hour? So I started doing that, called it a power hour. And that was pretty intense. I did it every single day. 15 minutes of writing, 15 minutes of mobility, 15 minutes of meditating, 15 minutes of reading or drawing. And then I'd go work out. And I thought that was the way that I needed to do my practices. And that did not last through 2020, the pandemic. And so what I really started incorporating was a sense of compassion for myself of, there's a time and a season for certain practices and ways of being, and this is not that season. And if I can get one of those things to happen, what is my favorite thing that needs to happen right now that I'm doing for myself that I feel rejuvenated by? In this current season, right now, it's 15 minutes of writing 3 times a week. It's perhaps a walk or exercise for an hour 2 times a week. It's what's one more? Oh, I do meditate every single day. So I will give a hat tip to Emily Fletcher for her path of meditation. 15 minutes 2 times a day. It's been a life changer. My partner and I both do that as accountability partners, and it's been 4 years. And even if it's not like perfect meditation, a mantra kind of thing, there's always that time set aside in the morning or the evening for quiet time, centering, grounding. And that's been a really consistent force. So I guess the essence of my answer to this question is it's constantly changing. I'm constantly listening to what it is that I need and what it is that I want, because those are sometimes two different things, and trying to blend it in the middle to what's going to serve my body, my brain, my heart and spirit the best to show up.
Beautiful. The word compassion, I love that. We're often so hard on ourselves. I'm going to go do this. And then when you falter, you beat yourself up. But interestingly, then you talked about it being seasonal. And I really love that tuning into where you are in the rhythm of your life, whether that's fall or summer, or it's just the tune of the week. And I love that's a real natural cadence where you're not meant to always be up. And if you are, you're going to end up crashing. And then you talked about having something that you did for you. But interestingly, you mentioned compassion at the word. And when you break compassion up, the root of it is with passion. And it was just really interesting that so you have done something where you're tuning into the moment and where you are in the, am I up, am I down, am I with energy, am I not? But there's a certain thing that you will not compromise. And so then the practices shape and evolve based on where you are. They have to. And I love that. I feel like it's just beautiful advice because that is applicable to anybody. Tune into you, tune into where you are situated. And if there are certain things that are like bedrock practices that you want to lock in, do it with another person and hold each other, not to account, but to a commitment, like a bond of my word is my word. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me about that practice between you and your partner, because that's pretty magical to do things together. My wife and I do that. Like whenever we've done things together, it's been this lock in, and it wavers, but it's always like we've committed to each other. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I've been with my partner Gretchen for 10 years now. We just celebrated a decade in August, which was pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we started meditating 4 years ago, and it was in the midst of a very, what felt like chaotic, ungrounded time in our life. And we had just taken a huge leap together. We had moved from the city into the country, no electricity. We were living in a trailer and things were just really hectic and we were trying to make it work and we were working so hard to just make so many things happen. And we heard, like I said, Emily Fletcher talk about the difference of moving through your life, right brain all the time, kind of everything. If you're a hammer, everything's a nail, and just everything, you got to do it. It's a checklist, next thing, next thing, next thing. And it just really felt like that. And my nervous system just felt so out of whack. And we both heard it and it pinged us both at the same time. And we're like, we could do that. 15 minutes, like 15 minutes twice a day. Like, sure, why not? And so we committed to each other. We're going to do this. We signed papers, marked the date. We still have it up on our fridge. And we have, it's not always at the same time, because obviously we're both independent people and intrinsically motivated, but we have hit every single day of meditation. One in the morning, one in the evening, and then there's a little portion of gratitude at the end of it. And knowing that somebody else is doing it, I don't know. I've never thought about not doing it because it just feels so good. It's helped me become more centered and grounded and less receptive with my nervous system. I have a very open nervous system, and it's really just helped hone that and bring my focus into what is the most important thing for me to be feeling right now. So yeah, just doing it with a partner, and we check in with each other. Have you meditated yet? I think the communication is there too. I think that's the best part, is that I can just say, hey, I got to go meditate. I don't have to explain why. I don't got to tell her what I'm doing it for. She just knows, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's permission. We give each other permission.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's a really good segue into question 4. And so you've got now this beautiful commitment together, this co-creation, like a ritual. And often we put things on a to-do list because, people have said this is on the path to success. It's successful leaders get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they do 7 hours of practices before breakfast, and then they climb Everest before lunch. But those practices aren't sustainable because they're forever up. And one of the things I'm super keen is, what are the easier reminders to be more human when you're surrounded by those who are maybe walking and talking a little less sort of programmed and conditioned people? So it feels like meditation is a way to sort of center in and amongst that, but I'm super keen to hear, what are some other easier reminders maybe that you utilize, or that you pass on through your coaching work or working with teams? So what are some of those easier reminders?
Yeah, it's a good question, because even people who have honed themselves in and are centered and grounded have moments that they're not. And we all have different levels of receptivity. Our ability to tune in and listen to another person, perhaps be over receptive, be enmeshed with another person. Hyper empathic is a thing. And so when others around us are perhaps being more programmed, conditioned, moving from that space, there's sometimes a tendency to lean into what they're doing. Oh, I got to be scared too because and forget who we are. So to me, the easiest reminder is, am I leaning too far? Have I lost my ground and my center here? Hold on a second. I've now attached myself to your story. I've become programmed, conditioned to whatever it is, whatever story you're believing, wherever you're at. And to take a breath and come back to, okay, here's where I am. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm feeling inside. If I can come back to those things, I would say it almost brings me back to the other answer of listening. The easiest way is to deep listen within yourself first. That's
Yeah, and you can get caught up in the momentum of somebody else's story and almost place it, because we do, we're storied beings, and you place yourself in that story. And if you don't come back to center and go, what's actually mine in and amongst this? Oh, okay. Yep, I've noticed. I've gravitated to that. Well, why have I gravitated to that particular thing? Maybe that's an old story for me to have to revisit. But I like that centering. And to give people background, that's what we did before we press record, is we breathed together. And that's actually the simplest and easiest reminder. And most people browbeat themselves, but you just, but I don't know who, it's a very famous yogi who just says, no, the work is actually bringing your mind back to center when it's wandered. Well, that's the rep. That's the rep. That's when it gets strong. And then it gets easier as time goes by. But everybody, like you said, everybody does, even those who are high functioning, stray and come back to center. Come back to center.
Come back to center.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the easy ones. Simple, not always easy.
Absolutely. So we are up to question 5, and this is evolved, this one, and I like where it went to, because it started with an I and now it's very gravitating because it's a we question. And so how do we reconcile where we are at with where we want to be with grace and ease? And before you answer, I really want to, when that question came to you, the source idea of such a deep question, I'd love to get a little, when that question first landed, how did it manifest?
Yeah, so that's been a question that has walked with me for many years, probably 20, perhaps my whole life, of kind of a sense of feeling out of sync. I don't match this way of living. How could I feel good in my body? How do I look good? I have 15 years of fitness coaching, and a lot of the focus there is on goals, on changing the way your body looks, changing the way it moves, and changing where you are to get to this spot that's outside of you. And sometimes that can get wrapped up into it becomes too all encompassing. And the only thing you can think about is how you're moving, how much, are you doing it well enough? Is your body changing enough? What are you eating? Is that good enough? Are you is it down to the wire? And it becomes the only focus. Now, if that leans towards, whatever your goal is, being an Olympian, but if it's something like, in my background, I'll share that 15, let's see, I guess it was 15 years ago, I was 350 pounds. And so in that space, I did not feel very comfortable, and I did not move forward with grace and ease because I wanted out of that spot as fast as possible. But I was there for a good 4 years, and it was really uncomfortable. Like, it was, I wanted out. And the way I got out was, there was nowhere else to go but to change my life, is where it came to. And I asked for help, and I got help, and walked through the steps, and I lost 150 pounds in a year, and I became a coach after that. That's the short version, but it worked. And so in my mind, it kept going of, I need to have a goal out there. I need to fix something here to move forward. And doing that year after year and time after time, if you hit the top of a mountain, there's only one place left to go, is down the other side. And it doesn't feel so great every single time. That pinnacle of the mountain, unless you've created something there, walking up and walking down, really, I think it's about creating how you're moving throughout all the journey. And so I got curious, how do I do this? How do I love myself as I am, whether I need to lose 20 more pounds, whether I need to tone something up, whether I need to get faster with this certain thing, whether I need to do a water cleanse or fast, or however many different directions it could go. How do I love myself first? And then how do I also hold space for these things that I want to create, like the book? How do I create that and love myself in the process? And I think that the answer that I've kind of come to here is we need to move forward by leaning into the things that we love. And that's really easy to say, but I think if you get down into the root of it, is learning the areas that create shame in our lives. It's not about fixing those areas or changing them. And that if I am shameful about the way my body looks, trying to get away from that only creates more shame. If I can accept where I am, feel it in my body, and know that I could be in a different space, I could move in a different way, but still feel my body as I'm doing that and changing along the way. It's a different sense. And I have an example of this. When I first started losing weight, some people say, I ran for 10 miles a day and I ate chicken and broccoli. That's not quite how it went for me. Sometimes it did, and that does work. But the spaces of like what I'm talking about now, how to continue to create beautiful moments and beautiful connections in your life, it started by connecting with myself. And I was in such a deep, dark spot back then when I was 350 pounds. It was like, how do I love myself? Like everybody says this, how do I really love myself? I don't even know if I like myself very much right now. Like, what do I do? And I had to dig deep into, I didn't like anything. There was nothing that I liked anymore. I wasn't connected to anybody. So I had to find something. What do I like in my life? Okay. I like movies. It was like the only thing I could connect to. I really like cinema and movies, and I love the way that previews are chopped together, and I love the way a story can be told, and I can just get immersed in there. And okay, I like movies. It's the only thing I like. Okay. What I'm going to do is every Friday when a brand new movie comes out, I'm going to walk to the movie theater because I love seeing those movies. And the movie theater was 2.5 miles away. So being 350 pounds is kind of a long walk with a big sack on your back, except it's on your body. And I would treat myself. I would treat myself to a movie, but I'd also do my movement at the same time. And I would feel like so happy once I went to that movie, like I was taking myself on a date or something. Like I was so taken care of and loved that doing the movement just kind of became a part of it. So that's just one example I have of a way I try to hold myself as I'm moving forward. And I am not perfect. This book was very difficult, right? And it was uncomfortable. And I did not hold myself with grace and ease as I moved through it. But I think it's because I had expectations around what I wanted it to be. And I just kind of started sitting into done is better than perfect. And here's where I am. This is where my voice is. It'll continue to change. And I loved certain parts of it, and celebrating those parts was the most important for me.
Ah, what a beautiful example. Because what I love is this question is you can go and create this beautiful ethereal response to it, but you grounded it in something. And I wanted to tie back to where we started. So the theme is that there's two themes that I picked up. One was this notion of love, of deep love. And the second was how it doesn't need to be a miserable existence. So fun. So, okay, well, I'll go do that thing which I want to do, and I'll add these things. And so I connect my experience of love. And And I've been a PE teacher for eons, and I've always wanted to work with the people who hated sport because they had these experiences of being in their body and moving, but they were connected to these horrible experiences where they would pick last, or they were seen as uncoordinated and teased, and create experiences that were fun so they could just love being in their bodies. And so I just love that. But I also wanted to honor the fact that you've apprenticed to a question, because in a society that is just looking for answers, the true measure is, can I stay with this question and let it have its way with me? And you think of reconcile and reconciliation and love and grace and ease. To be 350 pounds, you animated, that was love. Like, hey, I need a hand. And sometimes that's what we need. And so you animated with love, that I can't move with grace and ease, so I need some help. And I feel like that's what this podcast does, is by hearing and sharing in others' stories, especially stories that you see yourself in, because they're just not, they're not a Michael Jordan story or a this person's story. They're not this elitist category. There's just, I met that person at the shops, or that person, somebody that I met at Flow Genome, and they're just this amazing human being who I deeply connected with. And the love and fun. And they're two things that I connect deeply with you, is that in a container of listening, you hold love and fun with beautiful questions kind of bouncing around. So thank you for the opportunity to reflect back those questions, because I feel like everybody who's been on in the hot seat, hey, I'd love to hear your responses. And as a podcast host and as a space holder, I've got a responsibility. So it's been a deep honor to be able to do that, and to just hear these beautiful, grounded stories from a truly amazing human being who lives and walks their true voice. So I just wanted to honor that. Yeah, and I know that the listeners will love this. And there are some magnetic sound bites in this that is just you singing from your own songbook. So thank you.
Steve, thank you so much. Thank you for asking the question. What questions walk with you often? It came at me at the right time in the right place. I wrote those questions down on a pink Post-it note, and I was like, here they are. Here they are. I'm going to show these back to Steve. What could we do with these questions? And it started as writing, because you inspired me with your writing and the consistency and having the Hedge School publication. And then it turned into interviews of people, these humans that, to me, I feel are very balanced in their lives. And the interviews, asking questions, turned into connection. And really, I've learned at the end of the day, connection, whether it's with yourself, with your feelings, with what you're doing, with what you need, with what you want, with love, connection, spending this time together, listening to one another, is the biggest change maker.
Mic drop.